What is up, you guys? It is me, Suha St. Michaels, and welcome back to my podcast. This is Unveiling Evil, episode 3, and today we're going to be covering the case of a young lady named Noela Rukundo. But quickly, before we get into today's episode, if you would like to like today's video, please feel free to leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of today's case. As always, case suggestions are always more than welcome. I feel like I could do a lot better and I could get these episodes out a lot faster if I know what kind of crime you want me to cover, any kind of cases in particular, but just let me know. And as always, share the video, subscribe. And if you subscribe, you also have the option to decide on whether you want to see personalized videos. So you might just want to see the true crime. So if you subscribe, you will get just the notifications about the true crime if you choose the personalized option on your bell, or you can always select all content. Also, feel free to share the video. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Unveiling Evil, episode 3, the case of Noela Rukundo. So, January 2013 is where we're going to start today's case, and Noela is actually informed that her grandmother had passed away. So at the time that Noela received this news, she was actually living in Melbourne in Australia. However, she was originally from Burundi in East Central Africa. And when Noela was informed of her grandma's passing, she was also informed that her grandmother's funeral would be taking place in Burundi, East Central Africa. So on the 21st of January 2015, Noela actually flies over from Melbourne to Burundi. And Noela actually stays there until the 17th of February 2015. So obviously, the funerals happened. She spent time with family. She's caught up with family members and friends, things like that. And later that night, Noela decides to actually head back to the hotel as she was very emotionally exhausted. She was very physically tired. As you can imagine, she had an extremely long flight all the way from Melbourne in Australia to Burundi, Eastern Central Africa. So that's quite a long flight anyway. And the situation as to why she's there, her grandmother passing also, it's going to have a huge effect on her. And obviously, she's going to be physically tired, emotionally tired, psychologically tired, which is, it's all understandable. So Noela then receives a telephone call at 8 p.m. So shortly thereafter, after the phone call's finished, Noella's husband actually tells her, because her husband came with her, Noella's husband actually tells her, why don't you go outside and get some air and, just have a little bit of you time on your own and, just have some time to just breathe, get the fresh air. It's been a very emotional day. She's very tired, go out and get some fresh air, might do you some good. So Noela decides to actually take up on her husband's advice, so she goes outside for some fresh air, and she sees a gate near the hotel that she's staying at, and she decides to open that gate. So shortly thereafter, the gate has been opened. Noela sees a man who starts to walk toward her. However, this man actually has a gun in his hand as he's approaching. Noela is obviously terrified at this point and she's frozen to the spot, obviously because of the fear. Imagine somebody walking up to you with a gun in the hand. And this man actually motions for Noela to go to a nearby car whilst he's threatening her. So obviously she's under a huge threat. There's this unidentified man, a complete stranger, with a gun standing in front of her telling her, you either walk and go and get in that car or I'm going to shoot you. So as Noela actually enters the car, she notices that there's two men alongside the gunman. And as Noela is in the car, she's also blindfolded. with a scarf tied behind her face so she can't see where she's going. She doesn't know where she's going. And the men set off and they're driving for about 30 to 40 minutes. And when they arrive, Noela is taken from the car and into a unknown location where Noela was actually tied up and bound. Noela later said that her captors were actually speaking to her in Swahili, which is a language. Now, this is the really bizarre part. The men actually started to tell Noela that she was actually purposefully abducted and that their intention of abducting her was to kill her. Noela's captors actually told her it was her husband who had arranged for her to be kidnapped. He'd actually paid these people to kidnap his wife, abduct her off the street, and kill her. So you can imagine how she's feeling. She must be in complete shock. Like, she's flown over with her husband and she's come purely to attend a funeral, her grandmother's funeral. Next thing you know, she's in a situation where she's been abducted off the street. There's 3 men that have took her. There's one with a gun. They've took her to an unknown location. They bound her eyes the whole time so she couldn't see where she was going. She's tied up and bound. Just imagining that fear. I couldn't imagine what she must have been thinking. So Noela obviously was curious and she didn't believe them. She wasn't sure what was going on. And one of the captors actually phoned her husband in front of Noela. And they explained that they had her. She was tied up. She was bound. They'd abducted her from the street. And her husband actually said on the phone, quote, "Kill her," end quote. Shortly thereafter, Noela had actually collapsed because I imagine the fear, the panic, the unknown. She's probably scared to death that any second now she's going to be shot and killed, or what are these men going to do to her? She's tied up, she's defenseless, she's bound. There's 3 men there. They've just found her husband. She knows her husband's behind her being kidnapped. Her husband's just told the men, kill her. She probably passed out more than likely due to the absolute fear, which is understandable. I mean, that poor woman and what she must have gone through. So shortly thereafter, Noela's family was actually informed that Noela was dead. And Noela's husband was actually a refugee, and he was known to be quite controlling, quite violent. So not really a good man. So Noela finally wakes up because she's actually not dead, she's still passed out. So when she does come to, that is when Noela is informed that her captors were actually paid to kill her. But, however, these kidnappers didn't want to. They didn't think that killing a woman was right. They didn't agree with killing a woman. They also didn't agree with murdering children. And 2 days later, Noela was actually set free with the evidence and obviously with the phone, and obviously knowing that her captors had phoned her husband and he'd confessed and also said kill her. So Noela then decides that she's going to reach out to her Australian pastor, and she tells the pastor that she actually is alive and she requests to keep that her being alive as a secret. She also requests that the information the captors give her about her husband arranging to kill her, about him saying to kill her and him being behind it, Noela actually requested that be kept secret. So Noela decides to devise a plan, and she's actually received help in order to get from Central West Africa back to Australia, which brings us back to the 22nd of February 2015 was the day that Noela's family held a wake for Noela, because obviously her family had been informed that she was deceased at this point, so they're thinking she's passed away. However, she actually isn't. And Noela is actually in attendance at her own wake during that time. She's actually in a car nearby. So after the wake, Noela is actually in the car and she's watching people leave the wake, and she sees her husband. And immediately she gets out the car and decides that she's going to approach her husband. Obviously, her husband was flabbergasted, floored, jaw-dropped, because he's thinking that she's dead. He did get the call saying that she was dead. So he had no idea that the captors had actually let her go. Not only that, they'd given her the evidence, and they'd also done the phone call to her husband where he quote-unquote said kill her, so she knows for a fact it was her husband who set her up. So you can imagine his reaction as she got out that car and approached him. So when Noela finally approached him, she actually said surprise. And before asking how he could have done this and why he did it, Noela's husband actually told her that he thought that she was having an affair and therefore he'd planned a hit against her. And that was what caused it. And obviously, Noela wasn't interested in repairing that relationship. She was interested in justice, and her husband was begging for forgiveness, even though he did set the entire thing up. And, she was actually supposed to be dead. Later on, he actually ended up being sentenced to 9 years for inciting murder and is eligible for parole after 6 years. And Noela is, from what I hear, she's doing actually so much better now. And she's come forward and publicised her story, and she's trying to help people that have been in similar situations. So that concludes episode 3 of Unveiling Evil, guys. This is the case of Noela Rukundo, and I know it's a short one, but I thought I would come back and give you a little something. So please don't forget to like today's video, subscribe, turn on your bell, leave a comment down below. Any case suggestions, your opinions on this case, share the video. And I will see you guys in the next episode. This was Unveiling Evil, episode 3, the case of Noela Rukundo.